Hello everyone, thank you so much for joining me today. For today's video, I want to cover some of the latest comments from Jim Farley, who's the CEO of Ford, around their transition into electric vehicles. This was from an interview today, June 5th, on the Fully Charged YouTube channel. I have a link for that in the description in the comments below. But there's some very interesting nuggets from that interview that I really want to highlight and cover on this video. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Again, this is from the Fully Charged interview. I have a link for that in the description in the comment section below. And there are two specific comments I want to cover. The first one was around Ford's strategy. Let Jim Farley go ahead and take it from here. It's just a clip from the interview, and I want to add some of my commentary that I think really highlights just how monumental of a sort of position we are in the shift to electric vehicles that very few people actually saw coming. So I'll go ahead and I'll let Jim take it from here. Again, this is a clip from Fully Charged. It's about 2 minutes long. Let's go ahead and get started.
As we enter the second inning, for the last 2 years, we've been working on our second generation product. We're now working on third generation. And the second generation product turns out to be really more targeted. What we've noticed commercially is that most of the established companies are failing in the EV side. They are selling and they're coming up with new models. But when you look at how much they invested, how big the plants were, how much capital they put at risk, and basically, what customers are doing and buying, it's not panning out commercially. So, and the worst is kind of the premium players.
Right.
And we can get into that. But, we decided in our second generation to do something very different than other companies. Our first 3 generation products were, we electrified our most iconic products. So F-150, as you said,
Yeah.
Mustang, but we made it an SUV, and then Transit, the best-selling van in the world. And we didn't know what we didn't know. That was 7 years ago, 7 years ago. So we've learned a lot. In the last 2 years, we've been working on re-aiming our capital and our investments in different areas than the first generation products. And we don't want to go where everyone else is. We want to electrify. What we've learned about electrification is it's actually not about propulsion system, although that's interesting. It's really about what you can do outside of the propulsion system and also the software. So because it's a digital product, and our first generation EVs were analog products. So we're going to electrify commercial, larger 3-row crossovers, pickup trucks, high performance vehicles. We don't want to make commodity products. We want to participate in the part of the market where Ford knows the customer really well, and we can innovate on their behalf for things that they don't know.
So from that little clip we just listened to, there's actually a lot to take away. And we'll start with this first point. EV is not just a battery plus motors, it's much more than that. So there's a highlight from that clip where Jim said, even though it's interesting that the EV has a new drivetrain, basically a battery and a motor, it's not just about that. It's about everything else you can do with the platform. He called it a digital product, which I think is a really good way of looking at electric vehicles and really highlights just how game-changing of a nature an electric vehicle is. It's not just something that takes you from point A to point B. It's everything else that comes with that package, because you freed up so much room in the car by removing the engine, the transmission, all these filters, the catalytic converter, the muffler, the exhaust system, right? All these things disappear. And all of a sudden you have this shell, this brand new thing that you're working with that enables you to do so much more. And one of those huge things that you can do with an EV, because it has a battery and no fumes, right? You can park it in your garage and it can just chill and won't kill you, is that it can become a huge digital product. So I thought that was extremely interesting. And then the other comment that Jim made was that Ford will not commoditize their product lineup. And this is within the context of talking about mass market vehicles, getting that down to super affordable vehicles where there might not be a lot of margin. And so Ford's strategy is not to go all the way to the bottom, or let's say to the truly mass market vehicle segments like Tesla is with their $25,000 compact, or how BYD is approaching their sales in China. Ford is going to be much more strategic about which cars they want to come out with. So what's interesting here is that I don't think we should expect Ford to really mass market vehicles, especially in EVs. They're going to be much more strategic about what kind of electric vehicles they're going to come out with, as far as a market goes. So like the days of Fiestas and the Focus and all these cars sort of being everywhere, and especially in Europe, this is going away, and they're going to become much more streamlined and much more focused on less cars that are probably going to be much more expensive than mass market vehicles, is my opinion. Now, what's interesting to think about here is that if the ICE car goes extinct, if the gas car goes extinct, then Ford will not be one of the largest automakers in the world anymore. Right now, they're selling about 4 million cars per year, which is less than they used to, versus, say, a Toyota or a Volkswagen or a GM that are somewhere around 8 to 10 million. My gut tells me that if this is the strategy Ford is going to go down through anyway, I think they're going to be selling a lot less cars than, say, 4 million cars per year. It might be 2 million cars per year or potentially less if the ICE car, the gas car, goes away, which I think it will. Just something to keep in mind as you were thinking about the size of Ford. And then there was also other commentary where Jim called out the rest of the automakers. So, direct call out of other OEMs and their failed strategies, where, these guys are saying, we're going to invest this much money on X number of cars, and we're going to have every single car is going to be electrified. And the commentary around Jim with respects to legacy OEMs and a part of the industry that he knows extremely well, he said that those strategies are clearly failing. And so something else has to be done. And that's why Ford, I think, is taking such a unique approach as a legacy automaker to electric vehicles, where they're openly partnering with Tesla around supercharging, and they're coming out in there, and Jim's being extremely candid about what Ford needs to do from a growth perspective as it pertains to EVs. So I thought this commentary was super interesting, and it highlights just how far behind truly every other automaker is in respects to, say, a Ford as an example, and especially a Tesla in this case. Automakers like these could be GM, Lucid, Toyota, right? I'll let you decide in the comments section which automakers you think Jim is referring to when he's saying, the broader strategies haven't been working. But these are the ones that really come to mind as I'm thinking through those. GM with their massive saying, we're going to electrify every vehicle by 2025. We're going to have more EVs than Tesla by then. Sure. Toyota doesn't even electrify really. And Lucid is failing quite dramatically in the market with very, very expensive vehicles. Now, what's doubly interesting about the comment that Jim made is that this is a headline from today from Electrek. GM CEO says Tesla has the lead in electric cars. Surprising, right? Mary Barra, she led. Apparently not. Tesla has the lead in electric cars, doesn't see profitable $30,000 to $40,000 EVs until the end of the decade. Mary Barra says that she doesn't see profitable electric cars in that range until the end of the decade, or maybe even later, which again solidifies the point of Jim saying that them commoditizing is probably not the right strategy for them. And I think Mary's backing this up by saying it's because they're not going to be able to make money on it, especially with all the legacy systems they have to bring with them, the supply chain, the factories, the culture, right? It becomes extremely difficult to make a profitable car, especially the cheaper it gets. So I think this is yet more sort of validity to what Jim is saying from one of his competitors. In my estimation, there's probably going to be one or two mass market vehicle makers, especially around this rhetoric we're getting from Jim and Mary Barra. And my guess will be Tesla and BYD. Tesla very openly is going down market with their compact car, the $25,000 compact car. And this is where BYD's bread and butter is in China. And as they expand to the rest of the world, expect them to bring very affordable EVs as well that are going to compete directly with Tesla. The way I think about it is that Tesla is probably going to be very similar to an Apple situation, and BYD is going to be very similar to a Samsung situation, where Tesla is going to cater to the more, say, premium, call it mass market vehicle with a lot of software, hardware capabilities sort of embedded. And then BYD is going to be your just flood the market. Just flood the market. Just make as many as you can. Who cares if we make money? Just flood the market. And then your Fords and whoever else survives are going to play in more niche areas. It would be my estimation of what's happening here. So now the second comment that Jim made in that same interview is around software difficulty and one of the biggest hurdles that legacy automakers have as they transition to electric vehicles. Before I play that clip, I would love it if you throw me a like. See, my dog is even asking you to throw me a like. It helps the YouTube algorithm show this to more people. Thank you so much. That was great timing by Peony, our super mutt. She's like 9 breeds. All right, let's go ahead and play the second clip, and I'll give you my commentary afterwards.
And I mean, that's certainly one of the things that we've experienced. The European the legacy automotive European companies have struggled with, because they can make really good cars. They can do really good suspension and steering and body, all that stuff they can do really well. But it's the software that is always the problem. I mean, the early Volkswagen, the ID3 that a neighbor of mine has, all the problems were software. The car was perfect. There's nothing wrong mechanically with it. It was the software that messed up quite often, and the charging was a problem.
Yes. If I explain to the listeners how crazy our software system is and why it's so difficult for legacy car companies to get software right, I'll do it very quickly.
Yeah.
So to save probably $500 a vehicle, or let's say 350 quid a vehicle.
Yeah.
We farmed out all the modules that control the vehicles to our suppliers because we could bid them against each other. So Bosch would do the body control module, someone else would do the seat control module, someone else would do the engine control module.
Right.
And we'd have about 150 of these modules of semiconductors all through the car. The problem is the software are all written by 150 different companies, and they don't talk to each other.
Right.
And so even though it says Ford on the front,
yeah,
I actually have to go to Bosch to get permission to change their seat control software.
Right.
So
Wow.
even if I had a high-speed modem in the vehicle and I had the ability to write their software, it's actually their IP. And I have 150, we call it the loose confederation of software providers, 150 completely different software programming languages. All the structure of the software is different. It's millions of code, and we can't even understand it all. So, that's why at Ford, we've decided in the second generation product to completely insource the electrical architecture.
Right.
And to do that, you need to write all the software yourself. But just remember, car companies haven't written software like this.
Yeah.
Ever. They've never written software. So we're literally writing how the vehicle operates, the software to operate the vehicle for the first time ever.
Yeah.
Again, extremely candid commentary from Jim Farley, which I'm continually impressed by. I really think he's doing such a great service to the broader auto market by being so candid about the different difficulties that Ford is facing. But really the biggest highlight here is that legacy OEMs are not experts in software. It's all outsourced. And this was described by his example that he's got all these different companies. Basically, they own the IP or the right to do whatever they want with that software. And for all the things to work together in the car, Ford basically has to bring them all together. And then they're going to be like, okay, you do this, you do that, you do this, but you all have to talk to each other and make it work. And that's why companies like, say, Volkswagen have had such a huge problem with software, because managing 150 different companies to do the same thing is impossible. It's hard enough to do one company, right? In this case, Ford and others in the legacy auto market have to do it with every single supplier. And so that outsourcing of the supply that Ford has had to do for the last God knows how many decades, it's coming to bite them in the butt. However, they are deciding to bring it all in-house. They are deciding to become vertically integrated. Now, what's interesting here is that if you think about how Ford described the electric vehicle, which is more a digital product and not an electric vehicle, not just a battery and drivetrain, it's the whole thing, and the powertrain rather. If next-gen transportation systems need to be digital, those that don't bring software in-house will die. And this is, I think, quite an obvious sort of end game, right? If it's a digital product, which is the electric vehicle, is really digital, and then you're expecting 150 different companies to come together and all work together to make the in-car experience as good as possible, what are the chances that's going to be successful? And how many automakers are going to stubbornly rely on that in order to transition into the next generation vehicle versus what Ford and Jim Farley are doing, which is like, screw that, we're going to do it ourselves, right? So this is giant. This is everything. This is everything when it comes to the survival of legacy automakers, in my opinion. And again, the candid commentary from Jim is awesome. And it's obvious that Ford gets this. Ford gets this. How they execute, their ability to execute, how they approach this is completely sort of the second thing they have to do. But the fact that they get it and they're talking about it so openly, I think is really the best first step that you can expect from a company like Ford, where they're actually taking the steps necessary to become a a new company that has the proper culture to transition to electric vehicles. So refreshing, so awesome to see Ford say this and Jim Farley say this. What's interesting about that commentary, though, is that if we take a tweet from Elon Musk that he had today, put that within the context of what Elon Musk is saying, and I think really validates Jim's commentary around what automakers need to do to transition into the next generation vehicles, in this case, a digital product in the electric vehicle. Tesla aspires to be as helpful as possible to other car companies. We made all our patents freely available several years ago. Now we are enabling other companies to use our supercharger network. If you remember the Ford and Tesla partnership, they went together with superchargers. Also happy to license Autopilot FSD or other Tesla technology. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that Ford or other automakers will take Tesla on that offer, Elon Musk on that offer, but it really validates just how important it was for Tesla to do this so early on, which gives them the lead they have now. In my opinion, this is validation that Tesla's strategy from the beginning was correct. And a friend in this case, I'm not even sure if I can call Ford a Tesla competitor, a Tesla friend, I guess. The fact that they're so openly coming out and confirming this from a legacy perspective, I think really shows just how far ahead Tesla has been in the game. And it's finally coming to a head, and the broader auto market seems to be understanding this. Now, I'll be very curious to see how the investing world is going to react to this commentary from Jim, because it really paints a picture on how the rest of the decade, I think, is going to play out. It's becoming quite solidified. All the chess pieces have been put on the chessboard, and now it's just a matter of time for it to let it play out. And I think Ford and Tesla are extremely well positioned in this case. And some additional validation around that strategy. I made a comment on Twitter giving props to Jim Farley on his interview. And then there was a tweet right here. I love seeing the partnership going on from Mallory on Twitter. And then Jim replied and said, exciting for the whole industry. Respect to Elon and Tesla for getting us all this far. So again, another sort of validation that the strategy that Tesla has taken on, that Ford is now taking on, appears to be the correct one. And any automaker that doesn't do this will not survive the decade. And I really feel quite confident in saying that. They will not survive the decade if they don't vertically integrate their software and as much as they can and do what Tesla is doing. Just do what Tesla does and you'll survive. If you don't do that, you're probably not going to survive. Ford appears to have the right mentality to transition. I think they're building the right culture. I think they have the right leader in Jim Farley. I think they are taking all the right steps. The execution is going to be completely different. Their path to profitability in the EV segment is going to be extremely challenging. The size of the company was probably going to be drastically different in the future as they change their strategies, but they sure as hell have the right mentality to transition. And for every automaker that doesn't have this transparent way of going about their challenges as an automaker and the decisions that they're making, if they're not similar or exactly the same as Ford's, I really believe they're not going to survive. I think Ford is doing exactly what needs to be done to survive a very difficult transition, and anything less than that will be quite harmful for all the other players. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. What do you think about the commentary? What do you think about Jim's interview? Make sure you go check out, again, the full interview. I have it linked in the description in the comment section below on Fully Charged. Fantastic interview. Props to Fully Charged on how they approach that interview. Really, really, truly great job. And if you want to see more content from me, obviously, click subscribe, and I really, really appreciate it. And if you want to support the channel, I have a coupon code for Athletic Greens in the description below, which is a supplement that I take every single morning, free vitamin D and travel packs if you decide to support the channel using my coupon code. Fascinating stuff. The world is changing. So much has happened today. This is like the one of many things. You had the RFK podcast on Twitter with Elon Musk and David Sachs and a bunch of other people. You had the Apple headset that was released as well. I'm thinking about maybe covering those in later videos potentially. I would love to hear your thoughts on that as well, as I'm looking to sort of, allow you to kind of see all the other things I'm interested in and not just this sort of very kind of narrow thing with automotive. But yeah, let me know what you think of that in the description below, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching. I hope it was informative and helpful, and take care. Love you guys. Bye-bye.